Why do you think that is about I mean, is it that ceramics is less far removed from craftsman apprenticeship than the other art disciplines?
Absolutely.
Is that
Because
why?
I do think that like people in metals and people in glass also have big community stuff and like group pours and group like situations. I think it is a lot the craft, there's so much more like equipment that the crafts fields kind of deal in. I think having community helps figure out how to what do I do about the cluster feldspar situation? Like, why did my kiln not get to temperature? So I think that's a
firing a kiln also say
like a wood kiln takes
you can, and people do create kilns, design them to facilitate that, but it's definitely it's more challenging. There's no like magic bullet to do that. It is
like 30 hours.
It's a lot. There, people, and you have to do things. You have to make adjustments to the way the kiln's fired and whatnot. But it's not very common. Yeah, and it would be pretty challenging.
It's also I mean, I think I am not a wood firer. I'm a wood firer by marriage, I suppose. But I probably wouldn't do it except that it's like with the classes, because it's so much work and it's actually a lot of loss, which can be hard for beginning students. But the community builder is undeniable.
Better than anything else.
It really is. It's where people get excited. Like talk to a bunch of potters, they'll be like, oh, the first wood firing was like amazing and it hooked them in and all that. So I think that aspect of it is...
It's kind of like camping out.
Yes.
You're out there at 2 a.m. and
roughing it. You're together. Like there's a fire.
Right.
Yes.
A really intense fire.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people haven't seen
something
that hot or bright. You know, they
Where would they?
Yeah,
exactly. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. So
you're gonna start with your
I guess
origin story.
So I took a ceramics class in high school. But was just...
You took ceramics in high school?
I did
not know that.
I got that piece in the studio. Remember the triangle piece?
I mean, I remember your early works, but I didn't.
Okay. It happened.
Yeah, sure.
It happened.
Where were you growing up?
Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. And I went to like kind of a college prep private school. So there wasn't a lot of focus on the arts.
Okay.
But there was, we had to take like a drawing class and something like that. And I remember taking a drawing class, and I remember taking a ceramics class. Mr. Ruello was his name. But it didn't really like spark anything. It was fun. But I think that wasn't on my radar yet. I was pretty heavily into sports, which is, I think, another thing we can maybe tie in later. But I think there's a really strong connection between sports and art, or kind of creativity and sports, and kind of those two things I think overlap
Unpack it
a lot.
little bit. I'm interested.
So I think that especially in ceramics, it's a very physical process. There are a lot of artistic processes that are pretty physical, and I think the kind of the coordination, the movement that sports that you engage in sports is very similar to the same movement or similar movements. Maybe the better way to say is that kind of like brain body connection that you're exercising there,
and the discipline too.
I mean, the discipline, exactly. Practice, the kind of regiment. Also, the people don't realize that as an athlete, you're on the court or you're on a field, you're extremely aware of space and your understanding of space. I have to understand space to be able to kick the ball over to that spot or to hit someone running. And so I think those are that like powers of observation and perception are the same tools that you use, or that I would use when I'm making, like sensitive to the shape, to the way it fills space, to the touch, the physicality of it. So I was big into sports, and I think that I don't want to say I was good at sports, but I had spent a lot of years doing it.
Sure.
So that was all very natural to me. When I
That's
started to pick up tools and stuff, I had a lot of coordination. The movements were pretty easy. Now teaching, I can see some of these students how they have a real lack of that coordination, where they don't have a real good ability to kind of judge space or hand-eye coordination. So I can see how that's a developed thing, or how activities that promote that play into your then kind of creative.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I think that athletics really was kind of pushed me in the direction of creative fields, let's say, just because I didn't know about art, but kind of that I jived with the physicality of the process. And I think that also defines my current pursuits. Like wood firing is an extremely labor-intensive physical process. It's also really,
a team sport.
It's a team sport.
Right?
Yeah,
Think
like
about
you're
that.
managing. Like I'm kind of like the captain, and they've got the players and stuff. So that's very natural for me. The like real physicality of the process is something I enjoy.
A lot of sweat.
Exactly. I grew up
He's
doing
so
that.
good at sweating.
I grew up in Houston.
That's
I
my
I played
problem.
soccer year round in Houston, so we're playing like in the summer times and stuff. So that to me is very normal or not abnormal.
Sure.
So, so like I said, I think that's I didn't know about art, but I was already doing things that were supporting that kind of way of thinking. But like I said, I went to a kind of a college prep school, and they were really focused on academics and kind of things like that. So I made my way through that. I wasn't a real good student, kind of I had difficulties in certain areas. And it wasn't maybe until college that I started to really focus in on art as a direction. I started out as an anthropology major in college.
Oh.
I was pretty open-minded. I went to Trinity University in San Antonio, small liberal arts school. And I went in not having a real hard idea of what I wanted, so I was kind of open to things. I took a lot of different classes, and the first ones that really resonated with me were anthropology classes. And I did quite a few years of that before I realized that, and as you go through undergraduate, you start to kind of slowly sort things out, some people faster than others, and I started to think about kind of like the end game and what I wanted out of this, and I all of a sudden I realized, like, well, I'm just fascinated by cultures and people and all this stuff. That to me is, and I think also I could think back, we had a subscription to National Geographic as a child, and I would it would be in that little brown paper sleeve, and I would come home and it was there, and I would rip it open and just immediately start going through there. I thought when I was little, I was going to be maybe a photographer for National Geographic.
Oh,
wow.
That was just kind of, I just love the photos and all that kind of stuff. And you're just like, oh, that looks fun. So I think I had that background, and anthropology just kind of fit into like this study of all these things was just to me like, this is the best. I could do this all day long. But then I started to think, well, how do I do something with this? And I realized that that's not really, I was just an anthropologist by nature. That's not really what And I had taken some art classes. My suite mate was from Kansas, and his high school had like gas kilns and everything. Sweet. So I followed him into the clay lab, and the first time I saw him throwing on the wheel, I was like, that looks like fun. Yeah. And so that kind of started my art taking class, and then I stayed a 5th year so I could get my art credit to graduate with the bachelor's in art.
Otherwise, it would have been a bachelor in science.
In science, yeah. So that was the beginning, my kind of like inkling of like, oh, this is kind of what I want to do, but I didn't really know how I was going to do that. My dad was a professor, so I grew up in a professor household. I knew the kind of schedule, the like kind of, I guess the lifestyle
of a good one.
So
is it?
And so that I started to think like, okay, that's maybe it, and I started to take little kind of baby steps towards that. Like when I graduated and moved back to Houston, I went immediately and started taking classes at the museum school, the Glassell School of Art there at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston complex. And that got the ball rolling, and I realized, okay, next step is I need to go to graduate school so that I can get that piece of paper that will allow me to kind of make a life out of this thing. That's kind of how I sorted that out. Okay. And in the meantime, I was working at Reliant Energy in their back office doing kind of computer work, and realized that this was not it was good. It was two things kind of happening at once. I was doing this job and taking these classes, and it really just pushed me
for both sides
very strongly. Yeah, exactly.
Push,
it was a pull. Yeah, it was a really good experience. And it was just like I realized like this is next step, and then but not like thinking too far ahead, just kind of like what's the next step, and then it just kind of kept making those decisions, and here we are. We are kind of the same thing with I was graduating, and someone said there's a position at Baylor. This guy, Paul McCoy, is asking for some help, and he's trying to fill this position. And the person that originally was going to do that, Brenda Lichman, she actually moved up to Wichita, Kansas. And so that just opened, I thought, okay, let me just go down there and talk. And I had a talk, and Paul was, worked out. And all of a sudden I was in Waco. So
crazy.
Just, not that I want, it's just kind of making little decisions and steps along the way, and just kind of
and I'm sure he'll pop up later as we talk as kind of a mentor. And,
absolutely.
He's spent a good decade over there with him,
exactly
Wow.
Huge. And he's a really good teacher. He's a fantastic teacher. His he really knows how to teach, so I learned a lot. It's not my default teaching strategy, I guess, is more, and this is how I kind of, as a young ceramist, was learning, is the studio environment was very conducive. Like it was a very place you wanted to be. So I kind of model my default teaching style after that. But I learned really a lot from Paul about how to, like, the pedagogy, like to really kind of hone in the teaching craft, I guess is a good way to say it.
What did your dad teach?
He teaches, or he taught German literature.
I remember meeting him at Clayfest.
Oh.
Yeah, he was interesting.
He has a pretty interesting life.
And y'all are German, yeah?
Yes.
Weissenberger.
Weissenberger. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's got a really interesting story.
He had so many,
Really, he was born in Australia in 1939 in an internment camp. His dad was interned when the war broke out. He was like a traveling salesperson, and
they're like, "You're German, you're bad."
Correct. Yeah. And then eventually my grandmother joined him, and then
voluntarily.
Exactly. Well, she was pregnant. And so
That's right. Okay, I'm vaguely remembering this now.
She ended up making her way to Sydney, and then so he grew up the first 7 years of his life in the Australian outback, in a small town surrounded by barbed wire and guards and stuff like that.
Wow.
And then returned to Germany in 40 something to like ruins, just rubble.
Wow. Was there something linguistically related, or what did he teach?
He did teach German language sometimes. I mean, as just a side job in summer schools and stuff. But German literature is his thing.
That's okay.
Yeah, poetry, prose, and things like that.
Okay, cool.
Pretty interesting. But that was growing up. That was like he's a professor of literature, and so his focus on our studying or our education was what he knew.
Right.
And he liked the arts, but he was supportive, but it wasn't like we knew about arts, and he was handy. Maybe that's what I watched him build things and helped him build things and stuff like that. So
that was the outback, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And then back to Germany where it was wrecked.
Right.
So
Have to
I think
fix
everything
Yep.
was just kind of
wow.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Okay.
that we could do a whole day on my dad. I probably
You got to do a whole one of these.
yeah, with
Get him
him.
down
Yeah,
here.
he likes to talk
Go down
about
to
his
Houston.
stories too. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know if I answered
No,
that's kind
absolutely.
of my backstory. I don't know. Without going into extreme detail.
You
No,
did
let's-
great.
Susan,
You did
Yeah,
great.
well done.
Sorry. Yes. Kids.
the kids' college.
Yeah.
This
So
won't pick that.
Okay.
up. Yeah.
I also took ceramics in high school for my first
Where
time.
do you guys go to high school?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I was so fortunate. So I grew up in the north, and
Okay.
my family moved to Dallas when I was like 15.
Okay.
And I ended up
Whereabouts? Up north. Where?
Chicago
Okay.
area, Chicago
Okay.
suburbs.
Okay.
I was born in Michigan and then grew up in the Chicago area. So I cannot take the heat.
Okay.
And I don't like sweating. I also don't do team sports. So this is all very interesting about the wood, my
Right,
relationship
right.
with the wood cone. I have to think about that. But yeah, I went to a private Catholic girls' school in Dallas, Ursuline Academy, and they had a great ceramics department. They had wheels, they had a gas kiln, they had a raku kiln, the whole thing. And I fell in love immediately. It sparked me
Wow.
a lot.
So you were kind of like Paul, like 14, 15, 16.
Yes,
You got
I was
some
probably,
experience.
it was my senior year that I took
Okay,
it.
so
So I was
17,
16 or
18.
17, something like that. And I didn't, so after I graduated, I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to be a potter or anything like that. But my parents are both teachers and
Okay.
people with degrees, so they were just like, you're gonna go to college. So I was like, okay, I go to college. So I bounced around community colleges, and I always took clay classes, and I was just kind of doing general education. And then I ended up in my junior year at SMU in Dallas. And when it came time to kind of be like, what's your major going to be? I just had all these art classes. So it made sense to just get the BFA and continue on. So I had a really great experience at SMU. My professor, Peter Biesecker, is one of the kind of big names in the field. And I got a really great education from him. But I also was very young at the time and kind of not really paying attention or like, and I kind of got out of school and I had no idea
Right.
how to make a career or a living off of ceramics. So I waited tables for years and years. Yeah.
Oh, the club.
Yep. Yeah. And it was a good job in terms of like it wasn't a desk job or a computer job. Like I can't sit still. So I like that. But, and I made good money because I worked at a fancy place in Dallas. So I was making plenty of money. But it was a real toxic environment. It was the same with Niko, where he was like, I don't want to do this. I got to a point where I was like, I have to go back to school and learn what I didn't learn, figure out how to make this into a career, because I don't want to wait tables for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
I could if I had to, but
Yeah.
choose not to. So that's when I went to UNT
Okay.
and got the MFA at UNT, and that's where I met Niko. And that
Y'all
was
were both at UNT.
yes,
Yes, same
Okay.
time.
Okay.
yeah. So that's
In
what,
graduate school together?
Yeah.
yes,
So cool. Okay.
Yes.
And there's a lot of great teachers up there, yeah?
yeah. I mean,
The ugly stick, that Elmer,
Elmer Taylor.
Elmer Taylor, okay.
Yeah, he was a influential person for quite a few people at North Texas.
So my sister went to UNT.
Okay.
But tell me the ugly stick. Like what was the ugly stick?
I don't think we ever experienced
No?
the
Okay.
ugly stick.
No, not in a crit.
But
there was
the
talk
stories.
about there was talk about it.
I mean,
like,
he
there was
was-
threats. Like
Yeah, he
So-
was the kind of teacher that would, I mean, he just would be just like, this is bad, garbage, Like the story about the ugly stick is that he had an ugly stick that he would bring to critiques, and he would,
Edit.
He would make the people do it themselves. Was
No.
what I heard. That he would be like, "That's really bad. Here's the stick." And like, which I understand that as a
Sure.
teacher. There's teaching students that things are.
Everything is precious.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
not good enough to keep. Let's not make it permanent, that whole thing. But that was a pretty brutal. He was a bit brutal.
that was his
That was his
style.
shtick.
I kind of wish I would have had a teacher with an ugly stick because
Yeah.
my old stuff is all over my mom's house.
Oh,
It's like
embarrassing to see.
Oh, I wish that one had the ugly sticks.
Yes.
Same. But my parents recently moved, and so I was able to kind of edit some of the house
Right.
pots collection. I was extremely happy about that because there were a couple of really old,
Do some swaps.
ugly pots. Yeah, I was just like, yes, I finally get to get rid of this one, like without, not too much. They were distracted with all the other things
Right.
going on.
Right.
So
I think one of the great things that Elmer had as a teacher that he really impressed upon an entire generation of students is work ethic.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing I learned. I don't think I learned a single thing about chemistry
no,
from him. That was not an area that
technique.
he cared about, or technical
Yeah.
stuff.
Even though EPK is named after him, isn't it?
No.
Oh, I just got that in my head somewhere. Okay.
Where'd you get that? I
don't
love
know.
that.
It's funny.
EPK is for Edgar's Plastic Kaolin.
comes
Okay,
out
okay.
of Florida.
Yeah. No, he was like, you work. You show up in the morning, you work all day, you go home, you show up the next day, you work all day. Like
Weekend's just another work day.
Saturday and Sunday are just
And
2 more days.
Art is War. Have y'all ever read that book?
No.
It's Presley is the name that I think, but that was kind of the thesis of you're an artist, but you still show up.
Yes.
You show up for work every day.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld shows up, and he works on his jokes.
Sure.
That's what you have to do,
Yeah. And-
especially in ceramics. There's so much labor
Think
beyond. Sorry.
No. I think you have to make the bad work also. I mean, I think that's part of what the showing up every day and working is you make a lot of work, and some of it's bad and some of it's good, and hopefully you're paying attention and you learn from it, and that's how your work progresses.
You have to go
I
through the
think.
bad work
Yeah,
to
right.
get to the
Yeah.
good work.
Right.
And that's what he was basically saying. He's like, look, all this is the process is what's going to drive your work. And it's funny because Richard Serra, the sculptor, the American sculptor, just died recently, like a month or two ago. And I was watching a video, an older interview that he had, and he said the exact same thing. He said, process, like, he's like too much. He was saying something about virtual reality, and he was saying the 2 things about virtual reality are that they are not reality. Most importantly, they're not reality. And then secondly, that the spending too much time in virtual reality, it doesn't help your actual, if you're a sculptor, you're making art in actual reality. It does not.
Real laws of physics.
Exactly. Just and space and kind of things like that. So, but he was really talking about how process was the real driver for him, and also should be for young artists trying to figure out what they're trying to do. And I think he was kind of making a critique. There's a lot of nowadays, a lot of kind of intellectual work. There's a lot of like talking and thinking about the work, and I think he's kind of counterpoint to that was saying like, actually, like, you got to go in there and make stuff, and then that makes the work better. You can't think your way through.
Excellent craftsmanship.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in the kind of process thing.
So we finished North Texas at the same time, and then when Niko got the job to come down and teach at Baylor, we'd been dating for only like a year, not very long, and I didn't really have a plan. I'm not really a forward thinker person. I just sort of like do things. And Niko was like, I'm going to go down to Waco. And I was like, oh, do I want to like be the woman that follows the man? And I was like, well, I like him. And
He's a good dude.
yeah, so I thought I'll just go down and see what happens. And that was in 2008. So It's been a minute. It's working out, I would say. It was worth it.
Yeah, look at you. You're the head of the ceramics department here.
Yeah, so that's the funny part of the story you spent quite a time at Baylor, and then I started adjuncting here at MCC, just teaching art appreciation.
With Mike.
But I wasn't even teaching ceramics because this is such a small school and small program. We only have the one class.
Right.
So he was teaching that, or maybe there was 2 at the time. But anyway, he got a job in Wisconsin, and booked it out of here like in
here's my stuff.
August, pretty much.
Really?
And so, yeah, it was August. It was like a week before school started.
So there was no long apprenticeship. It was kind of like throw you in the deep end.
Well, and the school didn't have time to look for someone else.
Okay.
They were just like, someone teaching. And I was like,
yeah.
and here I am. So it worked out.
When was that? When did that?
That was probably 2010. So
Okay,
I
so not that-
adjuncted for a
yeah.
couple years. And then, yeah,
That's awesome.
it was fantastic.
It's crazy how these
So-
paths just kind of
Yes.
line up.
I'm a very lucky person.
I think you kind of follow your bliss. You
Yeah.
kind of are like, and so I think it's
You're
a good.
well positioned when the opportunity
Yeah,
strikes.
exactly.
Chance
And you also you're,
favors the prepared mind.
yep, yep. You also know what you like, so yeah, I think those does help. But
Wow. So then, so you were at Baylor for a good chunk of time, and you're here. So you're across town, not rivals, but you know.
yeah, it was. It was most of that time period. I was also teaching at MCC here.
Oh, so you're doing both. That's
I was
right.
doing
That's
both.
right. Because
it was a part-time gig over there at Baylor, so
Okay.
it wasn't really. It was definitely not enough to support myself.
Okay, gotcha.
But that was the me teaching here was all art appreciation and kind of design, and then Baylor was the ceramics. So they were not the same subjects.
Yeah.
Completely different population.
Also, yeah,
Student
I
community.
thought
Yeah,
it was pretty interesting. I enjoyed actually having the kind of two different campuses, two different lifestyles. Kind of the students. There's a world of difference between those two student bodies. So it was very interesting. This was frustrating sometimes, or kind of just trying to balance what the demands at one school were versus the other, because you couldn't just
It's not the same.
it's not the same. I
Yeah,
couldn't
sure.
apply the same strategies, you know. So, but very informative and very interesting, I would say.
Yeah.
Getting both of those perspectives.
So we kind of talked about the ceramics community, and so you're kind of building community here in Waco locally. So I'd love to hear kind of the local community. We just got a new guy, you said,
Yeah,
to Baylor.
Andrew McIntyre is
Okay.
the new professor
I
at
gotta
Baylor.
meet him.
He's great. I mean, he's a huge addition to the community, I would say. Just another. There's a lot of people that are getting interested in ceramics these days.
I'm telling you,
It's huge.
if you look at the sales velocity on these beginner wheels, it's especially around the Christmas time, it's off the charts.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how many people are buying wheels.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is good for us.
Right.
Good for us because it gives us students, people that are interested and need knowledge, and
Right.
we have it. But also then they get out of it and want to get rid of a wheel for cheap. So that's
Pick
great.
one up for cheap, pass it off to somebody else.
It
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
It happens a lot, actually. I haven't got a wheel in a while, but definitely people kind of offload their equipment.
Yeah.
So, because it's a kind of a big thing. Like I had a teacher tell me good advice, which was don't buy a wheel if you don't have a kiln. The kiln is the first purchase, because what are you going to do with everything that you've thrown?
Yeah.
Like your odds of finding a community place that's going to want to fire stuff that you're bringing in from home are low.
Huh.
In Waco, nearly non-existent. Although Maker's Mark maybe allows people to
Maker's
do that.
Edge.
Maker's Edge, yeah.
Triple Win does.
What?
Maker's
even heard of
Edge
that.
just moved into Triple Win's facility.
Oh, okay.
Corey Dickman is the entrepreneur that started it.
Okay.
And man, it's dynamic. It's a great place up there.
That's
They
cool.
got- and they'll
Where is
buy
that?
the stuff. It's
What's it
on
called?
Triple Win, like everybody wins. All
Okay.
three parties win. But what street is it on? It's in like over there on Clay, not quite to 17th Street. It's maybe 13th Street.
Okay.
Kind of near the silos, actually.
Okay.
That's
Maybe-
great to know because we don't do it here, but I get requests all the time. So
They
I'd
have
like
summer camps, and they have a lady that's kind of organizing the ceramics part.
nice.
But they do automotive, they do metalwork, they do
Oh, wow.
Maker's Edge. They have tons of CNC machines and 3D printing, and it's a geek's dream.
That's great because
That is great.
that helps everybody.
Yes.
I mean, that really
And that's his heart too. He wants to do that.
Nice.
it's cool.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
a community space.
Yeah.
I know from kind of teaching at a community college at a 4-year school. I also attended the Glassell School.
Okay.
I'm pretty familiar with kind of the real difficulties in having a community studio setup.
Really?
It can be really challenging because of the dynamic. There's, I don't run a community studio, so I can't speak exactly from experience of running it, but I can tell you that the dynamic is different because the people that come in are less students than at, say, a school. They're usually adults.
Yeah.
They basically want you to help them with their, or there's less maybe traditional teaching hierarchy of like teacher and student there.
You become more of a servant.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't,
that's
you.
a
That's
good
a.
way
I'll
to
let you
put
say
it.
that. That's a good way.
Yeah.
That can be really challenging, especially if, like, say you have all the knowledge and this person doesn't, but you're not allowed to, or that kind of avenue doesn't exist to kind of transmit that knowledge in a real way. The amount of control maybe that you have over what happens in the studio, kind of,
Because they're thinking more in a consumer mindset.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that, because the students nowadays are also kind of leaning towards that kind of consumer mindset where they paid for a class and they want a grade. They need a grade. That's how they, so I think that
Not
kind of,
as much in ceramics,
No.
probably on that.
but I think just in general that's a tough
Interesting.
situation to be in where you have to balance that.
Yeah.
So I feel that's all to say that the community studios I think are extremely challenging, and mad props to someone who can make that run, make that happen.
I'll check back in a few months. See
Yeah.
how it's going with it.
I feel like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I got to teach a workshop up there through the Art Center Waco, and that's the facility they used
Oh, okay.
For
for
their
their
cool.
little workshop
Yep,
deal.
yeah.
It's really fun. I was like, is this heaven? What?
Oh,
It was
nice.
just like
We got to go check
amazing
that out.
space. Yeah, it's
That's
really
cool.
That's cool.
I was going to say just that I think Nico and I, one of our goals that we are not hitting yet, but we talk about it, is we don't have a huge presence in the Waco community in terms of like, we don't really have sales that we do in Waco. We talk about it all the time, but we really haven't. We do a lot of our stuff, like our big community is the
Clayfest.
The Clayfest community, exactly, down in New Braunfels area. We're a big part of that community and everything, but I don't think that we have. I think we need to do more work on our hometown here.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
It's kind of exciting to me a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're both naturally introverts, and I would happily just stay in my studio by myself like all the time. So kind of getting out and doing things has a cost for me to do. So I can shy away from that sometimes, but I really would like to do better in terms of like the Waco Farmers Market. Sometimes like Emily Martinka is having a sale on Saturday. Or she's selling pots on Saturday at the farmers market.
Yeah, there's also East Side.
Yeah, East Side
East Side's
market.
growing a lot.
does things, and just having a home sale is something we talk about all the time, too. Just I've done that in the past. Has been a great way to like meet people and sell pots and stuff like that. So I would like us to do better with our close community. I feel like we do pretty good in the Texas community.
I'm a horrible business person. I definitely lack that.
Same.
It's not
Same.
part of my like formal education.
Not at all.
I didn't.
Why was it
I didn't
not?
grow.
Like if they would have just added that into the curriculum, we would be doing so much better.
It should be.
It's
It absolutely
so
should be.
important.
There's just, I think, the lack of attention and focus on the arts and what they can do, and then conversely what an artist needs to succeed.
I mean, you're
It's kind of
basically your
brushed
own
aside.
business if you're an artist. So
And nobody ever told me that.
right,
No.
I didn't get it.
Yeah.
right.
It's that would be very helpful, and
So for people that are watching this, maybe they're interested in ceramics, get some business.
Take an accounting class.
Accounting class, business, marketing,
all that stuff.
Just to understand, how you. But like Susan was saying, I also am a little bit of an introvert, and I am happy to sit in the studio all day making work.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of potters or artists have to learn that.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to talk to.
What is it about? Because why it's in New Braunfels is because it's so close to Eye of the Dog and that whole community.
So there's a community, a group of 4 couples that were, this is the 30th something.
Yeah, it's been going a while.
So they kind of were doing the kind of thing where you have a sale at your house, but you like put a map out and people can go to all of your houses. They did that for a couple of years, I think.
And they chose to live close by to each other, yeah?
I think they already did.
Is that what it was?
We can check it out, but I'm pretty sure they all already lived there. And so they kind of were slightly starting a community, and then they were like, let's just do it all in this one place. So Dee and Terry Bach, Billy Ray and Beverly Mangum, Galen and Michael Hodgson, and the Briegers, Jan and John Brieger. They were the core group, and 3 out of 4 of those couples are still making pots. Right. And at the sale, the Briegers are also at the sale and help run the whole festival. But they've moved into making food instead of I think they maybe still make pots. I'm not sure. Anyway, they started. I mean, they're special people in a special place and all that, like magic in the water there. And they have fostered this enormous now community. It's like 80 plus.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
I did. Last time I was down there was, I guess, when I was in your class, 2020, prior to 2020.
Yeah, I was going to say 2019. It must have been.
And it was awesome. And
yeah.
Billy Ray. they'd have him. We ate lunch in his house, and Lepresti was the artist that was doing stuff.
Renee Lepresti.
Yeah. And man, she was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a dynamic community.
It is impressive what they do. Very admirable. The whole Eye of the Dog Art Center is a great place. Huh. You can go there year round. The Clay Fest is only that one time in October, but the Eye of the Dog, they're doing stuff all the time.
Yeah, they don't have much of a drive. Guess if you make the community, you get to determine.
Yes,
absolutely. Where it lives.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that experience. So we don't have that community here yet, but how many years have y'all been doing Clay Fest, and how did that happen? And then who are some of the characters in there that kind of drew you in? And
so we started going to Clay Fest when we were graduate students, not as sellers, but as attendees. And I thought to myself, the first time I went, I was like, I'm going to be in this someday.
There's a lot of UNT artists there, yeah.
There is now more now than there was originally. I mean, I think I would love to see the numbers on this. I should ask Tasha sometime. A lot of people live pretty close by there, so there's not a ton of people that come from very far away because it's a lot to get. We can get into that. But yeah, we went down together multiple times as students or as just attendees of the festival. And then when we got into Waco and kind of got settled, we applied.
You got in first year, you were
solo. The first year I was in myself, which was terrifying. Okay. I mean, we had done, so one thing that was great about North Texas is because Elmer pushed making work, and his approach to it was very much from a craftsmanship point. So he encouraged that kind of sale where you take your pots and you set up a tent and you sell them to people directly was something that he really pushed us to do. I think other programs can kind of direct students towards galleries or a different sort of showing your work that's more hands-off, I would say. But Elmer kind of was really in, and I like that too, of like just directly meeting the people. Oh, it's the only social thing I can do all year, but anyway.
Well, it's probably when it's talking about pots too. It's
absolutely. Yeah. So I was in the first year. We had some experience from school and having shelves and having a tent. I had a mentor that traded me his nice Easy Up tent for a bowl. He was so kind. OB DeVille. So I had a tent, and we had shelves, and just had an idea how to do it. And that was the first year. It was pretty scary. And then the second year, Nico also was we did it together. So we've shared a booth ever since then. I think that was 2011.
Yeah, I think so.
2010.
I think 11.
Somewhere in there.
I think 10 was your first, and 11 was our first.
Okay. So it's really nice to have a partner on all the fronts, but like especially in the sales. So I only have to fill half a booth up. I only have to like stand there and take money half of the time. Although we usually do it together. But
if you need to tap out for a few minutes, you can go back behind. And
grab a snack, grab a drink of water, just like
run an errand.
Right.
People are so supportive and wonderful. I smile so much my cheeks hurt. Like I really will. My cheeks will get sore from doing it. So I like hide in the back and like. And my cheeks back to normal. So, it's great. And they're so welcoming. The community down there, it's not a competitive. Ceramics, I think, in general, is not a competitive field, but
it's crazy how collaborative ceramics is relative to anything else. In life. I mean, it's
absolutely
people want to share.
Yes.
Also, I will say that something about Clay Festival is you've got people that are that know something about ceramics coming there. So and I don't know, chicken or the egg. They've been fostering this clay community for so long that people have learned, and then they pass that knowledge on, and then they bring in other people. So the kind of visitors or attendees, not the potters, but the festival goers, they're
skilled, also
knowledgeable, and they're looking for things and asking specific questions. So that's we've done more than Texas Clay Festival in terms of fairs, and
they can be brutal, they can sometimes
be tough when if you're if you spend all day, I don't want to say defending your work, but basically defending your work, people complaining about maybe like prices or like what's this or that, and kind of,
or people, or like we did, Jazz Fest. Or there's a lot about what the festival is for.
Yes.
So that we've done a few as students. It was great because they had built an audience. But when we did it on our own, people aren't there. People don't go to Jazz Fest to buy pottery. They go to Jazz Fest to listen to music, to drink beer, to dance. Right. And they might look at the pottery, but they're not there to buy it.
They're the ones with sticker shock when they come through.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're like, I could get this at Target, that kind of thing, which is hard to hear. Sure. We know it's coming, but it's like, I'm sweating right now down my back. I'm standing here trying to sell pots. But at the Texas Clay Fest, it's all ceramics. Yeah. It's not just an art festival where there's also painting and jewelry. It's just ceramics. Yeah. There's no food, no drinks. Like the people are there for the pottery. So like at the Jazz Fest, you'll get somebody who's like, I can get this at Target. And at Clay Fest, you get someone who's like, what cone did you fire this to?
Right.
Like, how did you get that green in your glaze? I can't get chrome to do that kind of thing, So they know.
Yeah.
And I think that they have taught the audience that's how it works. I think they have taught the community. Yeah, they have cultivated that. And that's one of the things that makes it.
It is huge.
Because I can go set up pots on I can get a group of really nice pots together and go stand on the corner here and not sell one of them.
Yeah.
Not because they're bad pots,
right,
but because I'm not in like the right location. I'm not in the right space, not the right time.
I mean, part of the reason I've hesitated to home sale is I'm charging for a cup like that. I might charge $65 or $70 for it. And in the grand community of ceramics, that's low. People are charging amateurs are charging $100 for a coffee cup these days. But in Waco, I think people will come to a $70 coffee cup and like have a heart attack and fall down on the floor right there. So that's tough. I mean, I think you have to start and we have to start it here and teach our audience that this is what high quality pots cost. So we just haven't been brave enough.
Yeah. I've always looked at it like, the cost of acquiring fine art is like astronomical. But when we lived overseas, and we'd pick stuff up everywhere, and it's like the one art form that's actually accessible to me in my budget.
Ceramics.
Yeah,
I love that about ceramics.
I do too. It feels like the blue collar. I think Lucas McCain, the one who told me, it's like the blue collar discipline.
But it's art you can use.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes.
And
you get a lot more time with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to any coffee shop, you'll see a very amateur painting on the wall, and they want $300 for a painting this big, and it's great if they can get that. But the amount of time, I mean, don't get me started on the price thing. It's hard.
Yeah.
Because we're not going and buying a canvas and buying paints at the store. Like, we are making the clay, and we're making the glazes. Yeah, we're turning it from earth into stone, like the whole thing. So
it also takes a lot of knowledge. I mean, what we're dealing with in chemistry and things like that is,
$100 for a coffee cup is cheap.
The amount of education that goes into then being able to do that is quite a lot. And I'm not saying that you don't need education to be a painter or that amount of time, but I think sometimes people don't recognize that that's taking place.
It's the craft stigma.
It is a little bit of the.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I just met with Paul yesterday, and I never went into the ceramics department, the built room at all, because I was like, that's the arts and crafts. Until I went in there and I took a class with him, and I was like, this is so deep, and I am so shallow. And every one of these firing, glazing, building, wheel, they're all like universes to explore. And I've a reasonable amount of success in the other disciplines, and then I get in there, I'm like, this is big.
Yes.
And I never left. I couldn't leave after that.
Yeah. I think ceramics is one of the few fields where we are doing, is it alchemy the right word? Like,
Paul said something, I think.
Paul said we're alchemists.
Yeah, alchemists.
For sure.
Huh.
Right? Like, painters aren't making their paint.
Yeah.
Like, metalsmiths aren't making the metal. They may take metal and melt it and make it into another shape. But
they're not harvesting metal. I've actually seen recently a video in like Sweden or something of them harvesting metal from the ground. It was mind-boggling what they had to do to secure a small amount of metal from the ground.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was insane. It was really interesting. But for the most part, they don't do that. That Harlan used to talk about that all the time. A metalsmith instructor at UNT.
Harlan Butts, I know.
Yeah, Harlan
Butts. Oh, do you?
My sister and him were real close, so they'd like write haikus to one another.
Oh my gosh, he's a haiku man.
Yeah.
Wow, he's such a smart person.
Is he? Sweet. He seemed like a really sweet guy.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But he would talk about how kind of, that ring that you're wearing could have been a part of a piece of armor at some point, or a gold coin, or metal is constantly being melted down and recycled and stuff like that.
You don't think about it,
You
but
don't think
it's
about
true,
it, but
right?
like, yeah. So
Clay's the opposite.
That's when I took his class. On the first day, he said, or at some point, he said to me, "Metal is soft and clay is hard." And I remember being like, "Well, that's not right. Clay is soft and metal is hard." But he meant that clay. Now this is hard. It's fixed. It's permanent. It's never not going to be this. It might be in pieces, but it's still going to be this. Whereas the metal can change,
reform.
Isn't it?
You could turn a ring into a necklace. I mean, just
it could be a spear. It could be
It's very interesting. That
smart feller.
Is he?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a very smart fellow. But yeah, connection with the materials maybe is really strong in ceramics.
Yeah,
where it's not as much in other fields. That's not a blank. You can't apply that blanketly, but I think a lot of painters that I know buy their paints, and they don't weave canvases. They go buy and stretch canvases.
I didn't think about
that. Never even crossed my mind.
Or if they're painting on wood, they go to Home Depot to get a piece of
They're
plywood
using
or a
most
panel,
artists are using already existing
prepared
stuff.
materials. So
crazy.
I don't think that changes the value necessarily. I don't want to put a value on it, but I do want to say that to do ceramics,
you might be a little biased.
Ceramics is intensive.
Yeah.
And I guess you hope that the people recognize that, and then you can then sell also, or you know, I want to say sell the work, but sell the work for what it is kind of worth or appropriate.
But I do want it priced in a way that people will actually use it.
Yeah. Also,
you
at
know?
the same time,
when it starts to be $100, people will think about whether they're going to put it in the dishwasher or
especially
put it on
in
a shelf.
this economy. It's
Yeah.
a little bit harder to.
Yes, absolutely. Like, we are selling luxury items. You don't need fine art pottery in your life. So
maybe you don't think you do.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
You do, though. You do.
Yeah, I think like you were saying a little bit of kind of the way that you interact with the pieces, like that can really enrich your daily experience, and like in a way that using non-handmade stuff. I mean, I would maybe advocate for just a blanket like handmade things are good, are positive, are healthy.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
You know.
Wow. So, art, potters, ceramists. Help me out with this. Ceramist. Is that even a word?
Yeah.
Ceramicist?
Yeah, both are words and both
Okay.
are whatever.
Both are valid.
Yep.
Okay. And then there's potter, which is making pots.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the more. That would make
Specific,
sense.
maybe.
Okay. We support ourselves in various ways: waiting tables, making pottery tools. What are some of the more common ways? Because I think a lot of people that watch my channel are like interested or like wanting to learn a little bit, but you know, they're not quite sure
How they would live.
Yeah.
How they pay their rent. Yeah.
Where does it break down? I imagine teachers are probably high up there. You
Yes.
guys, Lucas, Paul.
So teaching full-time here at MCC is fantastic.
I'll bet.
That covers
Yeah.
all of our bills. So we have the luxury of making pots that we want to make, whatever we want to do, and we can afford to fail. So we can take chances because we don't have to pay rent with those pots. But I think if you don't have a full-time job in teaching, and honestly, though, the full-time teaching job takes away a lot of time that I would have to make more pots. Like I would,
Sure.
I would make so many more pots if I didn't have a job,
Yeah.
a job that wasn't making pots. Like my
Yeah.
job is not to make pots.
It's like a 70% overlap with your, where you want to be.
Yeah. But I think for a lot of people starting out, like we always say, like Niko was just saying earlier about diversifying. If you have a lot of things that you can do, you don't have to be a full-time teacher. You can teach a class at the community center or a couple classes as an adjunct. Like there's plenty of people that teach adjunct and also do ceramics. And if you can have your finger in a lot of different pots, like kiln building, like Niko is really working on this kiln building.
I didn't think about that.
I would also maybe add to that. Start small. So like maybe you do like you have a booth at the farmer's market, or you have a booth at a monthly thing,
Right.
And you maybe start to listen what people are interested in. Maybe it's like that they want flower pots or you. I'm not saying that this works for everyone, but paying attention to what people need or want, there's an element of that.
I agree with
I
that.
don't think that a good business model would be to make whatever you want and then try to force that
That's
on
where I'm failing.
force
I
that on the
totally do
market.
that.
That's the compromise. Yeah.
That's tough. So someone starting out, I might say like, maybe think about that in terms of what you're gonna do.
Definitely, if you're trying to make a good percentage of your income from selling pots to the public, you need to pay attention
consider
to what
to your
the public
public,
wants.
and I think that's where you that's the trade-off. If you work kind of like Susan was saying, if you have like a full-time job or you're kind of working in education or kind of, then you can make whatever you want.
Right.
Because you have that freedom. I think the minute you start to shift away from that, more and more you are you're working for the public or what it has to be the case. Yeah. And I think also that was traditionally that was the case. Like if you want to go, like, let's just take, for instance, early American potters, say like the immigrants coming over and they're making pots. They weren't even potters a lot of times, like talking about North Carolina tradition or the kind of, they were farmers, and in the winter when you weren't growing crops, you had a potting shed and you made pots. Like that was something that you did in the off season.
Out of town, really?
A lot of them, yeah, because they had fields or crops to support themselves, or maybe they were also selling it, and you did that, and then when you couldn't do that, then you did other things, and one of that was pottery. So, and then what do you make? Well, you make jugs. You make storage things. Like, well, what's in your area? Are you like distilling something, alcohol, when you need a thing like that? Are you flower pots? Then you do this, then you do that. And so I think that is pretty baked into the tradition of potting. Like you use locally sourced materials. I mean, we can jump overseas to Japan and talk about their extremely rich tradition. Right. But one of the things I think people don't realize is they hear these words like, shigaraki and bizen and all this kind of stuff. And those really relate more to locations and clays than they do anywhere else, anything else. So if you go to, say, Shigaraki, they have a really stony clay. It's very coarse. That was typically a place for making where you get storage jars from. Like you wouldn't go get your porcelain bowls in Shigaraki. They don't do that. They don't have the clay there. The porcelain is from this part of Japan, and that's where the centers for kind of this type of tableware are. Or if you like this, then that came from this clay deposit and this area, and that's what they make this type of form. The very location centric kind of the material, let's just say the material dictated what it is that you did. And that's not the case anymore.
Now you can ship anything anywhere.
Right. And you're buying the materials, right? But at some point before then, that was really like you had to you were limited with the materials that you had in hand. So anyway,
But I think you do a really good job of that. Like Niko, whether he's working in the studio or not working in the studio, he's always making. Like he's a maker. He's just a person who makes things.
He said he's building the deck right now.
So he's building a deck. So when it's sunny and nice, he works on the deck. When it's rainy, he works making pots. So that's not like a seasonal, but it's like a what's the weather like? What am I gonna? Can I be outside? Do I need to be inside? Kind of thing. And I think you have that mindset because you've thought about that.
Yeah.
Farmer aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's also to kind of touch on the how do you support yourself, and well, let's say just for example the deck thing, I'm saving quite a bit of money doing the deck work myself. So
it's also doing a really nice job.
Right.
Like, I would say that's a job. Like I'm participating in a business, in like kind of a another side of my business. Providing for us. So just kind of, I guess, on the greater topic, we've had a diversifying of diversity. Like, I'm not making pots all the time, but I'm making other things, and those other things allow me and us to do the other things that we want to do. So sometimes it's not just about the making of the pots, but I guess in general, everything kind of supports that. Lifestyle and the kind of decisions and things like that.
You mentioned North Carolina, and I never knew any of this stuff because I had like 2 semesters of Paul, and then I went overseas and I never did Paul. I mean, I kind of tried to do things here and there, and I always met the creative community, but I didn't get my hands dirty again until 2018, really as we were moving back here, right at the tail end of Malaysia, moving back here. The ceramic centers of America, where are they and what are they known for?
Man, so I can specifically, I've done a little bit of research. I mean, I'm going to probably get roasted, but I'll give you my what I understand as the East Coast has a lot of clay deposits. Okay. Natural clay deposits. And I think that those early immigrants knew about that. And so that the kind of those businesses flourished or because they had access to the materials.
I think there's a lot of stuff in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. New York has
North
clay.
Carolina.
Maryland, North Carolina, South
Jugs.
Carolina.
North Carolina is a lot about jugs and crockery.
Yeah. I mean, you also have to think back, this is before refrigeration and a lot of storage jars and stuff like that. But I can tell you that say in North and South Carolina, I think South Carolina was much more industrialized than North Carolina.
Okay.
I think they were also, they were shipping some of the work made in South Carolina back to England, back to Europe. Okay. And I think maybe in North Carolina, the tradition was more localized and it was less organized, and it was maybe more potter, like a farmer potters, or kind of.
I think that's true.
I think Charleston was a big ceramic hub, access to the materials. The Appalachians supplied the East Coast region with a lot of deposits as those mountains eroded, and I think you find that on the other side also, kind of Tennessee and
is that right? Okay.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, they actually, there was a kaolin in, I think it was North Carolina, called Avery.
Okay.
There was a mine, and eventually got bought out by the government, or the government shut it down because they wanted to store nuclear waste in it because of the composition of the mountain. Basically, this happens also. They've been trying to do that at the Yucca Mountain in is it Nevada or Arizona is another place that has a mineral composition such that it's good for storing nuclear waste. If there ever was I think the logic is that any type of accident would release enough heat to flux the material and basically glassify the surrounding, encase it. Exactly. Wow. So,
were you asking where the clay deposits are in the country, or where there's like ceramic activity and centers?
Yeah, I mean both, and mainly ceramic activity and.
I mean, I think those things are tied, right? Yeah. Like North Carolina, I think, has such a strong community because they had access to
the materials.
All that clay.
Exactly.
Same with Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Ohio also, kind of some places in the Midwest. I would say that places out west are much less so.
I think Minnesota and Montana are, I don't know about their clay resources, but as far as active ceramic communities,
I've heard Minnesota a lot.
Minnesota,
Wisconsin,
Minnesota.
Yeah. That was really had to do with Warren
Mackenzie, the granddaddy of American ceramics, I would say.
Y'all got to go up there, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you pick up
yes, I was able to kind of purchase a Warren Mackenzie piece through the kind of.
Are we gonna tell the story for posterity? Or are you gonna
tell
it? Or am I gonna tell it?
Was it Red Star?
Am I telling it, or are you?
No. I was just.
You're gonna tell it, and I'm just gonna jump in with important details.
I'm trying to name the gallery that it happened at in Minneapolis. I think it's Red Star.
Red Lodge.
No, Red Lodge is in Minnesota or Montana. Not Red Lodge Clay Center.
So we went to Minnesota.
Okay.
We were on a big pottery trip. Well, I'm trying to help you.
I'm taking over. Just teasing. So yeah, we were on a pottery trip, and we went. There was this gallery. I think it was Red Star in Minneapolis, and it was one of the galleries that Warren had contracted with to sell his work. Because at this point, Northern Clay. I think it might have been Northern Clay.
Okay.
There weren't very many galleries because he had a real strict kind of protocol for selling his work because people were abusing.
So he had that. I have to jump in and say his whole philosophy was kind of based on the Japanese concept of like the unknown potter, and the artist is humble and makes the work, and the work goes on the table. So his concept was not wanting to sell a cup for $100, but wanting to sell a cup for $10 or $20 that people can afford, accessible, and use it. So he would have really low prices on his stuff, and people would snap it up like crazy and resell it for high prices because he was Warren McKenzie and famous.
And that's where he had to come in with these.
Yes.
Yeah, he had basically there were some arrangements that he had a real lack of control in how the pots were distributed after that. So he then started to
Tightened
work with
it so
only a couple of galleries and had very specific rules. But I knew, and I didn't know about that. I just knew that the gallery carried his work, which was not, there weren't very many galleries. So we'd go in there. And immediately
it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
I said, I heard you guys sell Warren McKenzie pots, and I'm very interested in purchasing one.
Do you have any?
And so she said, yeah, okay, this is the deal. She said, we only put out 3 pots a day of his work. We don't say when they're going out. We just put them out, and then therefore that's where they are. And you're only, like, each family is only allowed to purchase 1 piece in like a per month or per a couple of months.
Yeah,
there were limits on, you had to, pieces were sold and names were written down, and it was all cataloged. So it was a real, like, you could only buy this many pieces.
You could buy
over
one
a certain span of time.
You couldn't buy all 3 if you.
Yeah, just 1 piece at a time, and then they said, we don't advertise when they go out. It's once a day. Yada yada, and
so we chatted with her a little bit.
Yeah, and
we looked at the other show.
All I can tell you is that they haven't gone out yet. That's what she said. She said, all I can tell you is that they haven't gone out yet, and she said, well, just go,
walk around.
You're free to walk around and look at the studio. They had a studio space. They had a gallery, which was full of pots. There were some nice shows.
In the place?
No.
Y'all were by yourselves there.
Yeah.
At that moment.
Yeah, at that moment we were the only ones. It was like
people
a
in the back.
weekday.
In the studio part, but in the front gallery there was a shop, and then there was a gallery, and that is where I got that Linda Christensen plate. I know, it's a great Linda Christensen show. I love it. Did I cry? Maybe. And I remember that it cost $60 the plate, and I was like, oh, that's so expensive. Which now I would like throw money
multiple
for that.
$60 for.
But we got that plate at that time, and I love that plate. And then we wandered around into the
back.
back.
They said you should go check out the studio. So it's a huge studio space in the back. So
I get to tell this next part.
Wandering around.
So we're wandering around in the back, and the gallery person came back and said to me, well, I'm not saying anything, but you should bring your husband up front right now. Because she could tell that this was because when it was 1 o'clock and she said, all I can tell you is I haven't put him out yet. I thought in my head, we're here till 6 o'clock. We're here. It closed at 6. I was like, we're gonna have to linger around this place until she puts these pots out.
Yeah, we said we're from Texas. We're on a pottery tour. We're potters. This is kind of.
She's thinking, okay, these are the guys that.
That's right.
Yes,
exactly. That's exactly right. Because she came back and she was like, tell your husband to come out front right now, and you can pick it up again.
It was cool.
Niko.
Yeah, it was cool. So I went out there, and there in the little corner where the Warren pots go were three little pots. I mean, they weren't. There was a cup, a bowl, and a little lidded jar.
Okay.
They were all the same glaze, a rebay glaze. They were like a rebay glaze. It was really interesting.
Perfect.
And I picked this little tea bowl, this little cup.
$16.
It was $16. And for the longest time, the price tag was still on there, just for posterity, I guess. Right. But it was amazing. I mean, it was really cool to participate in that process, like to have gone through that. Because easily you could find one of those at like for $100 or $75 or so, some kind of you're not.
He was alive at this time that happened,
alive.
But he's not anymore. So that really changes things.
Did he have silicosis?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's the only person I've ever heard of that has had silicosis.
Yeah, for all the scare tactic about it, you don't hear about it that much. I've thought about that before too. Yeah.
Wow.
that was a super fun trip. I
Yeah.
mean, we bought a lot of pots on that trip.
Oh yeah, we went.
Not just
we
It was a
went.
pottery trip.
It was
a pottery trip.
It's not the first one that we've done. We've done a couple of. We did one.
Yeah,
out
we
to
went by
North
Simon
Carolina.
Levin's on that same trip.
What did you just say?
We on another pottery trip. We went all the way to North Carolina
Okay.
and back.
Yeah.
Stopping by
Wow,
studios and
okay.
stuff.
Got a lot of
like
pots
that.
on
Got
that
a lot
trip,
of pots
too.
on
Not
that
bad.
trip too.
We are due
Yeah.
for a pottery road trip.
Yeah, it's fun.
We're thinking about what do we get. We're not very good planners. We haven't thought about summer vacation yet, but we have our little time, and North Carolina is definitely on the
Oh yeah.
on the options list.
Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Asheville,
Okay.
right? That's the name of it.
Asheville is where we
is very-
concentrated.
Yeah, it's
Really?
very cool.
That trip on. Yeah. There's tons of stuff
Huh.
in and around.
There's a potter online called Matthew Kelly, who I like a lot. He's a really sweet guy. I thought, I wonder,
Yeah.
go up there.
That's how you do.
I just
emailed.
reached out to people and
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, can we come?" We went to Michael Klein's
Yeah,
place.
sure.
We went to the
Naomi Daglish, the
the Daglish.
bandana pottery. We did quite a
John
lot.
Britt. We
Yeah,
went to John Britt's.
Britt's.
Really?
place. Yeah.
Mark Hewitt.
He's in North Carolina too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was he a sweet guy?
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
It
He
was
was
like-
in Dallas for a while.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, I had met him.
He
from
seems
that,
really
but
nice.
He's
He
super
is
nice, fun,
very
funny,
smart.
super smart.
You recommended that book to me, so I got
Yep.
that one. I got a few of his, but that one I recommend to everybody.
It's a great book. He also
Yeah.
has a whole YouTube
Yeah.
series. So if people
Which
want
is
to,
like the deep end.
yeah, for sure. If you want to get
Yeah.
real serious about chemistry
Yeah.
in a pot from a potter
Right.
approach, he's really good at that.
Yeah.
A
No doubt.
doable way to do it. So
Wow.
yeah, that was super. All those trips are fun.
I've taken a bunch of your time here, but I can't. I've been drinking out of this whole time, and I'm like, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah,
Can
I'm
you?
glad that
Yeah.
you're right-handed because I didn't think too much about that dot there. If you drink from it from a left hand, you kind of get an odd mouthfeel. Did you ever do any
No.
left-handed?
Uh-uh.
Pretend.
Yeah, like those two eyes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one that hits your lip.
Is
Oh, I could see that. I I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
So what do
so
we got going on?
yeah, so I, as much as I'm not a wood firer, I still am an atmospheric firer. So my jam is the soda kiln, and I like the soda kiln because it has that atmospheric thing where the areas that are like white or orange, that's bare clay, that's raw clay.
Oh, wow.
That just interacts with
Uh-huh.
the soda in the kiln, glazes it basically.
So what is it? Porcelain or what is it?
It's a porcelain,
Uh-huh.
yeah. It's a porcelain that we make here. And then it has that nice blue glaze on it. So I'm really into the contrast of a pretty glaze and a raw clay thing.
yeah.
So, and I like a lot of color. And you get a lot of color in the wood kiln. I used to say you don't get any color in the wood kiln, but Niko has made me realize that's not true. There's a lot of subtle colors, especially when you have a good fire like Niko
Right.
in the wood kiln. But I want like blue. I want some
Yeah.
bright blue. I want some like bright red, or I like color. So I like to contrast that kind of like watery blue with the fiery orange or kind of matte. And I have recently started. I was taught in my clay upbringing, that you can't put underglazes or mason stains into high fire kilns or atmospheric kilns, but I've been learning that that's not true,
Oh, really?
and you can. So like all the red lines there are just red underglaze.
How did you get that red line there?
So when
Put it in. Sorry, go ahead.
when the pot is in the leather hard stage, I draw on it with a pencil and I
Uh-huh.
clean the lines up real nice, and then I bisque it.
Uh-huh.
That goes into the bisque kiln and gets fired for the first time, and then I just paint the underglaze on into the lines there, and I wipe it off.
Okay.
So that's I don't know if it's technically mishima anymore, which is a technique where you're inlaying color or slip into lines. I don't know if it's still mishima if you're doing it on bisque or if you're doing it on
don't know.
glaze, but I think it's in the arena of the mishima technique. And then I spend a lot of time waxing. So everywhere that is white has wax on it, and then I dip it in another glaze. So
You line first and then wax.
I line first and then
I guess
wax.
you'd have to if you bisqued it first.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. And the handles, I always
Ooh, thank you.
love your handles.
Thank you. I always am working on them,
Master.
but I'm starting to be
Handle
happy
maker.
with the handles.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And can I see that real quick? It has that. So the last time, this is a great example of why it's nice to have a partnership or a community in ceramics, because, excuse me, the last time that we did the firing for the soda kiln for the end of the semester, so it was half filled with student work for the end of the semester and half filled with my work, and we were doing it together because Niko's teaching the class. I've got the pots in the kiln, and we had a dramatic situation where the wadding at the top of the kiln blew up.
Oh no.
In the candling overnight. So we load the kiln one day, that takes a few hours, brick the door up, and then we kind of started like preheating your oven. And we had an explosion that happened at the top of the kiln, and we were a little suspicious that it might happen, so fortunately we were watching. And when I came in the next morning to start turning the kiln up and firing it, I could see that the explosion had happened. So we had to turn the kiln off, wait for it to cool down, unload it, re-wad and reload everything in the kiln, which was, but if we hadn't done that, basically that wadding exploded at the top and rained shrapnel down on everything.
Every plate, every bowl.
Everything had junk in it. And if we had fired, we would have lost probably the entire load, because it would, And I told Niko when we were deciding to turn it off or not, I was like, I can handle that kind of loss, because when you're in the business for a long time, you just lose. It's part of loss. You just fail. You lose a lot. And we've done it enough that we can, we don't like it, but we can take it. But I was like, the students will cry. There's like their pots. Like we can't,
semesters.
Everything is in there. So we did a ton of extra work to unload, vacuum it out, put it all back in and refire. And one of the things when I was looking in through the window on the handle of the cup right there, I could see that.
Really?
I was like, I'm not totally sure this is
no way
shrapnel, but I know I don't have something inside of the cup. And I thought we cleared everything out, but I'm seeing that there right now.
Yep.
I don't mind that. If we had fired it as it was, we would have had an insane amount of loss. But that one actually makes that cup more special, because it doesn't kill it. It doesn't ruin the cup, but it gives the cup more story. I like the story aspect.
We
of
just
it.
got the story.
Yeah.
I love it. Niko, I'm not drinking out of yours, but would you mind unloading?
Yeah.
Maybe explain a little bit about how the firing, you explained the kiln out there, but like the colors, what are we seeing?
Yeah, a lot of this is flame marking. There's no glaze on the outside of the cup, so position in the kiln. A lot of the wood kilns. This actually came from Paul's kiln in the last firings that he had, previous firings.
Studio.
Okay. Yeah, the no glaze. So what you're really seeing is the interaction between the clay surface and the flame and wood, and
blasting the side of that thing.
Yeah, it's in a lot of wood kilns, the heat is very directional. It's called, a lot of times the kilns are classified as cross drafts, and that means that there's kind of a fire end and a chimney end, and the flame gets drawn through the kiln to the chimney, like, and straight. So a lot like how stones behave in a river. There's a lot of similarities between water and fire. Fluid, I think they
fluid
adhere to fluid dynamics, properties of fluid dynamics. And so you can imagine the stack inside the kiln is like a series of boulders in a river, and the water is just wrapping and finding ways around it, because you're not going to stop the water. It's just going to move around. And so my thinking in the loading process is always, how is the piece interacting with the flame? There's always like a front side and a back side. This piece happens to be fired right side up in kind of a traditional way, but I oftentimes like to, I'm gonna fire them on their side so that the direction of the flame runs maybe perpendicular or at an angle to the cup, so that when it's upright, it's showing I'm creating another line direction,
Right.
or direct, some adding directionality to it, different directionality to it.
And these, like the soda kiln, have to be. Do you have to wad these too? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Everything has to get wadded. That fly ash that goes through, that lands on everything, eventually will flux and fuse. Also, you can maybe you're using a slip or a glaze on the cup that would flux enough to fuse. So you have to separate. You have to separate everything. But I'm interested in the loading process as a way to decorate the pieces or mark the pieces. I'm not using the wood as a heat source, as a fuel. I am, but I think more importantly, I'm trying to mark the pots with the process I want. So that can sometimes take the form of masking, hiding the piece from flame, or exposing the piece to flame, or
like setting a pillar, a kiln shelf
yeah
in front of something.
I wish you had that one in your office that was.
Tried to.
Is that the one you were going to get?
I tried to go get the cup earlier. So it's not, I guess, a good way to describe it is it's not all additive. Like sometimes I'm trying to subtract the mark making from there, but I don't do that post-production. I do that kind of in production. Yeah. So like you were saying, hiding it.
Yeah.
Maybe with another piece, maybe in the way that I wad it, maybe put it on its side and tuck it away. But those are all considerations that happen in the loading process. And so the loading process for me represents a big, a lot of energy and kind of mental energy goes into that part of the process where maybe in another potter's work cycle, that's not where they spend their time. So, but I tend to like these cups are a great example of a fairly quick throwing process, and I put maybe a liner glaze in them for functionality, but then that's it. Then the rest is dedicated to the finishing process, the firing process. So, and I would contrast that with, say, Susan's work, where she spends a lot of time prepping the piece. Yeah. And
the lines in the waxing, that's where I'm doing and then when it comes time to put it in the kiln, I'm just like dunk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of where you spend your time. And then I would say, someone who fires in an electric kiln spends even more time, because the kiln does virtually nothing for you.
Nothing.
Yeah.
All of the work has to be on the front end.
Yep.
All of the work has to be on the front end.
Yes.
So I don't know how I would function. I mean, I would learn, but would be really difficult, because that's like a polar opposite to what I am kind of doing.
And there's you program it and you press go.
Yeah.
Which I would like. Like, I'm not at that. Yeah. Like
I don't know if that's true. You love the process.
I do, but I'm not going to deny the appeal of that part of the process. Yeah. Because sometimes I do, like right now I'm wanting to fire this kiln for the first time, or I'm trying to move that direction, but it's starting to get late in the summer, and at some point you can't be out there when it's 95, 100 degrees doing that.
Yeah.
So
you can, but I'm like, no.
Maybe
I said May. If you do it in May, I'll help. But
I'm
after
a wood
that,
fire potter in the winter, and I'm an electric firer in the summer.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Or soda.
There's seasonality.
I feel like the soda is a really great
in between.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah. Yes, because it gives you still atmosphere. You've gotten some really nice pots out of the soda cone.
And I have started to develop that, because I recognize the not the ease, but like how that fits into the seasons and kind of the rest of the process, life, I guess, let's say, how that fits into life. Because you can't, wood firing is a huge time expense in prepping the wood, loading the kiln, firing.
Did we wood fire when you were here?
No.
Oh, well, if you want.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm in. You just tell me. My daughter throws with me too.
Oh, does
Cool.
she?
So she would love to be a part.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean,
Definitely.
if you have content clay,
No. So when they do get some of that,
We'll have
and not
to-
mix
we
it.
yeah, don't mix it. Serious?
I remember you were always really particular about that, so I never.
It's very serious.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard too many.
That's getting
terrible
back
stories.
to what you were saying a little bit about the clay community in Waco and kind of how that's developing now. That's I don't want to say a roadblock, but
Because
everyone has to
code
be,
six.
we have students here that are like, oh, I want to do this. And I have to say, well, you can't take that clay over there.
Yeah.
And like, you can't, and you can't bring that clay over here. And like,
Yeah.
no, you can't do that. They're not compatible.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a challenge in trying to maybe like foster a greater clay community is that they're not interchangeable.
Yeah, you're playing Mac and PC.
Yes,
you can't
absolutely.
just like walk in.
Yeah.
You can't,
There's a big difference between electric, like oxidation firing, which is what electric is, and reduction,
Yeah,
which is
glazes.
what we do and what Paul
Yeah.
does. But that's not typically what happens at community centers because it takes a ton more skill
Yes.
and knowledge to do a gas reduction
Sure.
kiln than it does to do an electric.
I can't
fire,
imagine
so-
if they wanted to try and get a gas kiln in there, the permitting or
Oh
the
yeah.
Right.
But
they might not even
you would
allow
need a real
that, and you would
You can't just Google how to. You can Google how to fire an electric kiln, but I don't think you can just Google how to fire a gas kiln.
Yeah.
Like that is a much more complicated process to do. So there's a lot more that goes into it,
Yeah.
and I think probably more failure. I want to say,
I
but
would guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
There could be a lot of failure in an electric kiln as well. So
I have an old electric I want to convert to a gas, and there's Simon Leach. You guys know Simon Leach up in Pennsylvania? He does a lot of tutorials. He's been down here a few times.
has he?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Mainly at Homestead.
Oh
And,
wow!
Man, what a great guy. Super
I've
cool
seen
guy.
his old. I've seen him on YouTube. I've seen his.
He's like original gangster YouTube.
Yep.
You know, he's got videos
Yeah.
from like 15 years
Yes,
ago.
I was
you know?
gonna say. I know. Yeah, very old videos.
But yeah, he does some conversions, but I haven't done it yet.
is it like just Venturi burners, like
Kind of.
in the side?
I remember Lucas actually used weed burners.
Oh,
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. Do
yeah.
that.
I mean, that's
with the
basically a vent.
It is a Venturi. It
Yeah.
is. It doesn't. It's not the right. It's not the standard kind of baffle and stuff
Yeah.
like that system, but it is
How hot did he
orifice
get
and
it?
Lucas can do anything. He
Wow.
used to repair those kilns in Fort Worth ISD, and then you go in his backyard and he's made everything, and it's all recycled, but it's like aesthetically beautiful, even though it's recycled, and he's just a unique.
He's a nice guy.
Gift
He
of a
helped
man.
Nico
He helped me
Did
put
he?
in
with
the
the
arch.
Is that right?
came
Yeah,
down to
he came
Waco
down for
and-
one day. He was super.
Isn't he cool?
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, we've known
Smart.
each other from Clayfest.
Yeah.
And bumping in, and we started to really kind of talk every time. And then this last Clay year at Clayfest, we did not participate, but we went
Okay.
down.
Okay.
And there was Lucas, and I was
Yeah.
telling him all that was happening, and he said, "Oh, I'd love to come help you." So then all of a sudden we worked it out, and he came down for a day. We put in that entire arch.
Good
And-
worker.
and
Oh.
he's
Well,
very
you know what he does
incredible.
for his side job now?
He's in construction.
Yeah,
right?
he makes everything. And his
Yeah.
granddad, I think, was a plumbers. I mean, as long as I've known him, he can do anything.
Yeah.
Very
That's
skilled.
a great example of
Very-
the community.
and very
Right.
nice.
Like we only know him
Right.
from Clayfest.
That's right.
And from you, but it was really at Clayfest that we
Right.
met him. And then just having that, like people are like, yes, we will help you.
Yeah.
Come and
Yeah, shared his skill set. He came
we
in.
just
and,
gave him a sandwich.
Also,
and
yeah,
that was all.
I
You
have
did
to
all
say,
this work. Like,
I then after that, even more recently, asked him some construction related questions. I asked him
About
to
the deck or something?
yeah, exactly. I was like, look, I need your help. I'm trying to price this out. Give me your opinion. He said I would charge this much, and he said go take that to your call around, get for your bids.
Yeah.
I thought it was extremely helpful. He's knowledgeable. He was honest. He was really forthcoming with They had
He's
no
funny,
problems
too.
telling me.
He is
Has
funny.
a funny, good sense of humor. Our raku kiln has a gas burner that goes into it, a
Oh, really?
venturi burner,
Huh.
but it's just one, and it doesn't have any air or anything. I could see how you could definitely, with
Rig
the
it out
right
that way.
knowledge, if you probably need more than one. I'm guessing this guy uses more than one venturi burner.
I think he did. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, you need to get to cone 10 is more challenging than
He might not be doing cone 10. I don't know.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean
Wow.
cone 6 is a great temperature too.
yeah.
Yep.
Guys, thank y'all so much. This is so fun.
You're very welcome.
And I feel like I'm back at school today.
You come by anytime.
Oh, I appreciate
And
it.
definitely make pots and help us fire the kiln. That'd be great.
I would love it. I'd love to bring my daughter. I mean,
Yeah.
she's
Is this the driver?
yeah, she's she's a driver, aspiring driver. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's
that'd be great.
14 going on 20, 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, thank you guys.
You're welcome. Yeah, when I get the wood kiln up and running, you're definitely expect an invite.
Hey,
So would love
I'm
it.
in.
Cool. Great.
All right.
Great.
Well in there.